everyone. I'm Denise Garth, Chief Strategy Officer at Majesco, and you're listening to the Future of Insurance Industry Leaders podcast series. Follow along as I interview the best and brightest leaders in the insurance industry and insurtech landscape to bring you the latest in digital transformation, innovation, industry trends, challenges, and opportunities, as well as next-gen technologies. We use our experience to anticipate what's next without losing sight of what's now. Stay tuned to find out your next now. Welcome, everybody. I'm thrilled today to have a new guest on our Future of Insurance podcast series. We have Arvind Sontha, who is the founder and CEO of Kyber, a recent new partner of Majesco's. And we're going to have a very interesting conversation, particularly around AI. So welcome, Arvind.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, very excited, one, about our partnership, and two, about just, getting to talk about everything that's happening in the market. So
And there's a lot, believe
yeah,
me.
for sure.
So anyways, I always like to start by having everybody give a little bit of your background, your role at Kyber, and obviously our partnership, because while I think I know everybody in the industry and everybody thinks I know everybody, we don't know everybody in the industry because there's a lot of new people coming and going. So Arvind, why don't you give background?
Yeah, Arvind, founder, CEO, as you mentioned, of Kyber. My career really started in applied AI. So I was at Google, I joined Google at 19, doing applied AI across Google Cloud, Google Search, a lot of really cool products and features. And then Kyber actually originally started about May 2022. It actually originally started as an insurance company. So as a Google engineer does, I went and got my PNC broker's license. I'm actually licensed in New York, California, and Texas.
Difficult states.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a fun 2 weeks cranking through all of those pieces. And yeah, but then the company really grew as we also leaned into our strengths into building, AI solutions for insurance. And it's been fantastic to kind of just see the journey that that's had over the last few years. So,
You guys kind of come from that adjusting market perspective for
mhm.
PNC, and it's changing just like every aspect of the market is changing, impacted by loss of knowledge. People are retiring, people are moving on to other jobs. There's a lack of expertise, and the new talent doesn't have that breadth of experience and knowledge that really makes it difficult when you're doing adjusting to tell a story with all the details and to also create that consistency and quality. And we all know when you're communicating with customers, giving those details and explaining it in a story that's understandable is more important than ever. So how does your solution address that market challenge and that shift and helping insurers kind of keep pace with the demand from customers?
Yeah, no, great question. And you're exactly right. When you look at the broader trends that are impacting the adjusting market and just like that talent gap, right? As older adjusters and our veteran adjusters start to retire, you're not really seeing that inflow in terms of kind of the new talent that's coming in to basically take up those reins. You really do see that like impact on loss of knowledge, that change in terms of talent. And when I think about, what are the key things, as we've chatted with CCOs and our partners and so on, there's three consistent themes that come up in terms of what are the key priorities that you're looking for in adjusting talent, right? To be a good adjuster is to be objective, analytical, and ideally empathetic. Now, the hard part here is that to draft those tight narratives and make things understandable and explainable to your end claimant, policyholder, attorneys, and so on is actually to be a good storyteller, right? And that's not really in the purview of those top three skills that we talked about. These veteran adjusters, they've trained, they've had a lifetime and a career basically nailing that skill down. And what Kyber does is basically we say, hey, let's go take that skill that your best adjusters have. Let's make it and encode it basically into AI through the use of what we call AI templates, and then actually make it, federate or democratize it across your adjusting base, right? So now your newest adjusters, right, just like your best adjusters. You don't end up with, hey, was that like, okay, car got in accident at intersection. No, it's okay, 2016, black Mazda Miata, is rear end, all of those little details where when you have adjusters that are just overridden with the amount of claims and things and all the moving threads that are happening, you can enforce that consistency by basically taking all of that great knowledge that your most senior adjusters have and encoding it into these AI templates. Now, at the same time, that could be a little scary. AI, how do you govern that and make sure that it works at scale? Well, then our solution really provides that broader governance around that workflow in terms of template publishing, integrated review workflows tied to like seniority levels, and then also kind of making it bulletproof in terms of, well, how are we sending it out to that end customer, right? Like, is it going
Yeah.
out by email, certified mail? Did I cross my T's, get the CCs? Don't forget the 15 on a liability letter, all of those things that really you just want to make this process that we have yet to meet a single adjuster that loves doing this, right? So how do we
Uh-huh.
make that a process that they find delightful?
Yeah, no kidding. I think one of the things that's really interesting, and I often talked about this on a number of panels in the industry that I've been moderating, is that there's this fear about AI and governance, particularly from a compliance standpoint. And I often say, depending on, regardless of what process it is, I doubt that any insurance company can go in and validate exactly what their employees are doing for any specific process because not all of it is automated. Not
Mhm.
all of it is actually auditable. And that's kind of the unique thing, the combination of your solution and our solution, it provides a level of compliance because of the auditability of what it is that you're doing. So talk a little bit about that as well as the cost efficiencies that solution brings to bear.
Yeah, no. I think when we think about this in terms of cost efficiencies and compliance, I think the hard part here is that a lot of the regulations have evolved, over decades, right? And unfortunately, they end up treating these regulations end up treating human adjusters like robots, right? Now, humans are humans, right? We're likely to make mistakes and kind of do all these things. And so I think a lot of this, when we think about our platforms, is how do you make it so that an organization can compose their workflows, right? But then make it so that the business user, doesn't accidentally do the wrong thing. So the shape that that takes inside of Kyber, for example, is at the template level, configuring these specific review workflows or configuring like the specific send workflows. Like, hey, this is like a Reg 64 letter in New York. We only need to sync it and kind of put it somewhere. But these partial denials, these are really high stakes documents. Those need to get multiple approvals. We want to keep track of that entire compliance and audit trail behind that document. And then when we send it out, like always certified mail, but the adjuster doesn't even need to think about these things, right? In that, I think Dave Fernandez from Kingston actually has a really good lean principle about this, which is like easier, better, faster, cheaper, right?
Yeah.
So when you make things easier, right, then the business user can do things better. When they do things better, they get faster at it, and that ends up making the overall system cheaper, right? And so that's a really easy way to follow along what if we make things easier for users, it'll naturally trickle down into actually becoming cheaper as well, right? And then
Yeah.
driving those efficiencies and those cost savings.
Yeah, and I think the cheaper aspect, the way that we kind of like to position it is that it's a real productivity improvement that allows you to do more with the same number of people. It's not necessarily about eliminating people, it's about being able to do more volume with the same number of people with a level of quality and consistency that we haven't been able to really achieve as an industry prior to this.
Correct. And I actually, that's a great example of kind of the mutual client that we have today, where a lot of these critical coverage documents had to go through coverage attorneys. It gets bottlenecked, and they don't have this ability, at least prior to Kyber, to really federate that across their organization, right?
One of the areas of focus that was really exciting for us from a partnership standpoint is that we have a common thinking about how business processes are going to use AI. Share how you do this with data population, draft automation, the fulfillment automation, all the things that you were talking about to create that new business process with AI.
Yeah, great question. So if we kind of break out these three separate sections around data population, draft automation, and fulfillment, by the way, AI doesn't have to solve all of them, but it does play a big role in a few of them. So take data population. One of the key things that happens, AI is fantastic at reasoning over unstructured text, right? And it's really interesting because one of the best repositories that we find for kind of unstructured information around a claim is actually within the notes. Now, that sounds a little scary. It's like, oh, wait, the notes, like these are internal handling details. Like, whoa. But when you actually allow AI to, process and use these to actually drive better outcomes, it's actually this gold mine of unstructured data. So I'll give you a perfect example on like data population. What we can do here is we can actually summarize out the claim notes to drive and basically provide what will be the external facing narrative on specific types of documents, right? So going back to that Mazda example that I mentioned
Yep.
earlier, claims adjuster, they're overridden with work. They have to get to this like APD claim and they're just like, like let me just write something out. They're going to write out your car got hit at intersection, right? AI, on the other hand, will actually understand what the notes said, pull out those relevant vehicle details, pre-draft it, and then give you that deeply explainable, relatable, personalized piece of correspondence, bringing in all those key details that, oh yeah, wait, you in the 2016 Black Miata ended up hydroplaning, taking a right turn, and you were avoiding like the pedestrian, blah, 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 right? But that then also builds trust with the end consumer of that correspondence and that communication, right? So that unstructured data population, then into the draft generation, which is again deeply personalized, tied, empathetic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it would suck. You're dealing with like a $20,000, say like a, $20,000 like water damage to your property, and you just get like this cold, blunt letter that has
Uh-huh.
no empathy in terms of the situation that you're basically going through. Meanwhile, AI can basically encode that and say, hey, look, this is personalized. We're not just a robot sitting behind the other side of this. We understand what's occurred in your situation. We're providing it the level of care and empathy that it deserves and requires, right? So a lot of these things have this opportunity to kind of reimagine. Now, what I will say though is AI doesn't need to be used for everything. So take fulfillment automation. You want deterministic sequences of steps happening, right? Like you want it to get synced, you want it to go out via print mail or email or SMS or so on. And so in those cases, it's just more so making sure that those things, well, I will actually say, now that I think about it, we even use AI when it comes to like parsing out and identifying additional contacts, right?
Hmm.
So a liability letter, you have like
Yeah.
15 CCs on it, and it's this complex like case. AI isn't used on the fulfillment, but it is used to automatically set up all of the additional parties and contacts and who needs to be notified on this actual letter. But the fulfillment is still very like deterministic and non-AI, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that firm believer in a partner ecosystem, and we were one of the first back when everybody was moving to the cloud and InsurTech started, we were one of the first to really bring on some new partners from an ecosystem perspective. Everybody's operated with an ecosystem, but kind of formalized it more. But we've taken a slightly different approach in that there's so many opportunities for partnering out there. But we really want to make sure that we're putting our focus and our attention to those areas that our customers really want. And so our approach is really look to solutions that our customers want now and
Mhm.
that they're AI forward solutions as a part of our ecosystem and that they provide value now for those customers. So without naming the names, let's talk about, one of the use cases with one of our joint customers and what has that provided for them as we brought the two our solutions together on behalf of that customer.
Yeah, I think this customer in particular. So, one, we had that classic problem that I mentioned previously, right? Bottleneck, coverage attorneys need to write every single document. We don't have, and then they end up becoming the bottleneck inside of the organization. And the organization ultimately wants to deliver a first class gold star claims experience to every single one of the claimants that are partnered with them for coverage in some of their worst moments, right? So that key use case immediately aligned with what AI templates basically federate and enable for the organization. The other side of this, though, then also looks into how do you actually consolidate all of the different templates and sprawls. What will happen many times inside of organizations is there's no central template repository. So all of these organizations have like Word documents, and you have adjusters that are going in, and they're actually just like, oh, well, I had this one previously for that claim. So let me go and like take that previous document and kind of edit it directly. But that's fraught with, all sorts of issues like they missed a claim number. They accidentally are mentioning somebody else's claim details in their letter. And like maybe the policy language is brittle and outdated because it was like an old version of the policy and they forgot to edit it, right? Really consolidating those templates, bringing everything together is super critical. Then you get into the AI templates and then actually that governance, right? Because even if you just had an AI generated document, what is the actual control and process in place to make sure that that finalized version that you have within the system is the one going out to customers, right? We've seen it repeatedly, right? Let's say I had a letter, I sign it to you for review, I chase you down in a meeting and I get your approval because you have a trillion things going on, right? Then I get it back and I'm like, you know what? I'm actually going to modify this a little bit. And I'm like, I'm not going to bother you to go get the approval on it. So I just send it out, right? Now, well, was it version, I might have gotten the approval on version 97, and then we ended up sending out version 101. But like what I put back into the file was like version 98. And so you end up with really this lack of auditability around like what was that actual version, that finalized version of this document, this critical document that could show up later in litigation and you're
Yep.
defending against bad faith and kind of all these pieces where really you just want to create a system that has those controls in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so really we're very excited about that with one of our joint customers, for example, and also with what the APIs that Majesco has to enable us to bring these controls to it.
Yeah, so let's pick up on that. Talk about the deep integration between our two solutions and how our API library really enabled that deep integration that you guys did independently on your own, which was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, so we were able to, one, what was great was we were able to get access to basically like test environment, and then the documentation was basically encoded directly inside of the environment, right? And so live in real time, as we're actually looking at the APIs, going through them, figuring out, okay, what are the data fields that we're pulling over? How are we getting these documents back to the right place and kind of so on, as well as adding in these compliance notes, detailing the actual overall process. All of that was fully fleshed out in the API documentation for us to then be able to just quickly build out this integration. So with that, then we also luckily and thankfully had the Majesco team support for any additional
Yep.
questions or things that we needed to basically, get clarifications on. And a lot of these we've integrated with a lot of different systems. I'll tell you that. So
I am sure you have.
everything from Majesco's APIs, but we've even integrated into like AS400 mainframe systems, and that just isn't pretty, right?
Oh gosh,
Oh yeah,
imagine that.
it's just not pretty on that side. But yeah, the API was really critical, so that way we have this consistent, reusable, basically integration framework to then also kind of bring this integration across, any other future, hopefully like Majesco clients and kind of so on as well.
Well, I think one of the things, let me just kind of build on that just a little bit more, is that with the APIs, it gave you kind of control so that you could kind of develop it at your pace rather than having to have dependency on us other than answering some questions. And it also allowed, in the case of the customer, do it at the pace that the customer needed it at that period of time as well.
Correct.
So I think this whole concept of it goes back to how we kind of approach things differently. Instead of build it and they will come, it's about allowing a joint customer and allowing you as our partner to be able to develop it independently on your own without us having to do all of that extra work. And
Correct.
therefore, it's a win-win in all cases. Win for the customer, win for you, and a win for us. And hopefully more customers will easily come on board.
Exactly. That's the
Yeah,
hope.
that's our hope. So, what's next for Kyber within the business processes? What are you kind of looking at? And then also, what's kind of next from an AI perspective that you're looking at?
Yeah, great question. So, one of the things that we're very excited about, the opportunity with AI is ginormous, right? It's
Oh,
huge. There's so many things that we're basically reevaluating from first principles as we look at what the future holds. And so, I think probably, some things that are on the short term is, for example, we just launched our new editor AI. This is the ability that we basically bring in like natural language editing, and this is all building on top of cool things that we've done with like AI blocks where customers are able to, build their own AI templates directly within the product. Editor AI basically allows them to, provide natural language based commands directly inside of the editor to tweak, modify, and update their documents, directly, but still powered by all of those compliance and governance and auditability trails that follow along with that document, right? The other thing that we're really excited about is there's a lot of use cases for AI templates, specifically inside of commercial, right? Commercial insurance has just this huge variety of hyper complex kind of documents. So you take a look at examples of employee professional liability letters, or you take a look at commercial property documents, or
product
you take a look at
liability.
Yep, exactly, right? Or you take a look at, I mean, even take things title insurance, or you go even further back and you look at what are the communications that happen upstream between a carrier and their reinsurance partner in terms of large loss templates and those types of things. There's a huge amount of opportunity to basically, streamline this where, yeah, okay, like a human has to do this today. Do they really enjoy doing this? Is this what they want to be doing when it comes
Uh-huh.
to, this? Or is this just administrative work that's kind of been like dropped onto their plate that they have to carve out time for, crunch through, and kind of grind through when instead they could be focused, better serving the end client, customer, and so on.
Yeah.
Right?
So I want to ask you another question, kind of go back when you talked about your background. You guys started out as an insurance company. You're an AI SaaS-based solution provider.
Yeah.
Are you glad you made the choice?
What I'll say is, I think people should lean on their strengths. And our strength, while naive at the time that we started the company, our strength is definitely building great software that
Yeah.
delights the end user. And I think that was a good lesson because, yeah, when I sold my first home and auto policy, I was like, yeah, let me go back to software because that's where my
This
strength
is a
is.
grind.
Yeah.
So if I always like to end the podcast, Arvind, the same question. And I got to tell you, given we've done probably 120, 140 podcasts, maybe more. I haven't counted it up lately, but I've never had more than a handful that have been kind of similar. So it's
Mhm.
always interesting because everybody has different experiences and backgrounds that kind of answer to this question. So here's the question. If you could use one word or phrase to describe the future of insurance, what would it be and why?
Great question. I think if I were to use one word, that word would be human.
Oh,
The reason
wow,
I
I
say
love
this,
it.
yeah, and I think it's contrarian, but I think the truth is that we've forced ourselves under this pile of paperwork for decades, right? And we've accepted it as the status quo. When in reality, yes, AI is going to drive automation, it's going to do all these things, but at the same time, it's actually going to free up humans to be humans to one another,
Uh-huh.
right? And I genuinely believe that, right? I don't think it's like, oh, everything's going to be automated away, there's going to be no humans. I think the truth is that like when we can remove and stop treating humans like robots and let the robots do the robotic things, you can allow humans to be humans again to one another because of the fact that these regulations have been treating, these users like robots. No adjuster that I know is going to offhand remember that, hey, if I have a first party PD or a third party PD claim in the state of New Jersey, I need to send out a status letter at the 30-day mark for first party and a 45-day mark, on the third party. No, that's robotic. That is, leave that as like a system level process. Get back to taking care of each other, right?
I love the human because it really ties into one of the trends that I identified for this year, and it's really around human-centric AI.
Mhm.
And we can all get excited about AI and the automation that it's going to bring and the efficiencies and productivity it's going to do. But at the end of the day, there still needs to be that empathy and that human that can provide that connection with the customer. If we can actually leverage technology, in particular AI, to do things much more effectively, we can actually deliver even better customer service to our customers than what we have today. And that's through the humans that are on those front lines every single
Exactly.
day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Completely agree. Yep.
Well, Arvin, we're thrilled about the partnership. We're really excited with the first customer, and they seem to be excited. We're looking forward to more customers kind of jumping on board to what this can really do to really help them really deliver more empathetic kind of adjusting and claims kind of an experience with their customers. So, congratulations on what you guys have built, and we're really looking forward to working more with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Very excited about what the future of our partnership has in store for us.
Yeah, it's great, Arvid. Maybe in 10 years when everything's kind of, modernized with
Yeah.
a different type of technology, maybe you can go back to be starting an
Yeah.
insurance company again.
There you go. I'll go get my license renewed then and I'll be like, hey, 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 do you need you want some
You might want to think about AI insurance.
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
All
Oh
right.
man.
Well, thanks, Arvid. Have a great day.
Have a good one. Thank you so much.
That's it for this week's episode of Future of Insurance Industry Leaders podcast. Subscribe to our market leading podcast series available wherever you get your podcast from. Thank you for listening and be sure to tune in the next time.